He did state to them that any of the issues, including the payroll checkoff issue, could not be resolved as long as the men were out on an illegal strike. One of the first things Loeb did was have the legal department advise him on the legality of the strike. I don't think there's much question about the fact that the strike was illegal, that municipal employees cannot strike under Tennessee law, otherwise we never would have gotten a state court injunction, and that's been established by the Supreme Court. So Loeb took the position that they're on an illegal strike. If they come back to work, or if they adopt a legitimate stance, there are none of these things that can't be resolved. I remember Champa telling me he was legalistic and unrealistic and so forth. Loeb and many people began to say, well, you should go on into court and establish this. Then you'd be, instead of just telling the union people that it was against the law for these men to be on strike, and I speak of the common law of Tennessee, you would have a court decree pointing it out. Well, he felt that going into court was not a good move. He felt like he didn't have to go that far. If you'll recall earlier in this thing, the newspapers and most overt public sentiment was very much on Loeb's side. Newspaper editorials were more royalist than the king. This was before the boycotts and so forth, and the Scripps Howard group began to hear from their people up higher. But in any event, we started getting editorials in the paper, get into court and join the strike. Well, of course, the injunction of a strike is of limited value. I mean, you can't force men to work. But after that, after a period of time, when was the date of the court injunction? Do you recall?
I believe it was, I was trying to look it at, and
well, it was not immediate.
It was sometime in February. Geez, I thought I had.
Well, almost daily, Loeb was getting advice from his lawyers, some of his lawyers, to go into court. Loeb didn't want to go into court, and finally, it was just an overwhelming sentiment in the community to go on into court. Well, so he goes into court. They get Weintraub, because Weintraub had been the last one, and this was a continuation or a supplement to the original action. And of course, they got the injunction. After the injunction, Worf more or less took over for Champa along in here somewhere, because Champa had more or less made himself objectionable to the community. This had been on television, and people, you'd see signs around town, Champa go home, and so forth.
February 24th, I believe.
See.
Yes.
Weintraub was in it, but it appeared after he got in it that there was really no need for a labor specialist, because we were dealing with common law issues. And however, he was helpful in some respects on that. Gennady was still, well, common law of the state is the state law made by brought over from England, the continuation of the basic law, which is not law passed by legislatures such as Congress or state legislatures. It's the general law of the state, made by the courts or confirmed by the courts, you might say.
Was there any time as soon after the strike began and relationships began, that the mayor had any specific reason to be wary or frightened?
I have plenty of time. The only reason I'm doing this is so I'll have some idea.
Right.
I set the time aside.
Thank you. Any reason that he had to be concerned, or anybody had to be concerned about the mayor's safety?
No, that didn't enter his head. That was not. I remember the policeman who began to be near him.
When was that?
Seems to me, and I don't know specifically, but it seems to me that happened after the first. That's right, the little car pushing deal.
23rd.
Right, down on by Goldsmith.
Yes.
But the mayor never requested it.
The mayor didn't want it. The mayor never has wanted it, and to this day objects to it. And of course, his family has him out at the house.
And then it was probably Mr. Holloman.
Holloman insisted on it.
Yeah, it must have been.
Still insists on it. Mrs. Loeb wishes Mr. Holloman would not continue to insist on it.
Yeah.
I think Loeb himself may have gotten so used to him that it's like having just some old buddies hanging around, but
So
it's
that
different with her.
most of the police action in that sense, such as when the strikers did go to City Hall on the 22nd and then the 23rd, there were policemen at City Hall.
Yes.
Now this probably was Mr. Holloman. Or
Yes,
was it?
there's no question about that.
I mean, Mr.
it
Loeb
was
had
more
no-
or less his. Oh yeah, Loeb had nothing to do with that. He, on several occasions in which I sat with him and Mr. Holloman, he continued to say, "Now this is your doings. I'm not taking over." Incidentally, the mayor has the power to take over the fire and police
That's what
under
I
the
wondered.
city
Yeah.
charter.
Yeah. Now, did he
But
ask
he
Mr.
never-
Holloman why he did it, or did he question it in any way, or what was
I
the
don't
reason?
believe he did. I think his general approach was, Frank, if you think that this is necessary, I back you.
A good executive does back.